Now, joining us to analyse the latest developments is Dr. Mohamed Osman, who is an international affairs specialist. Thanks for being here with us on Qnews, Dr. Osman. So, mediation efforts by Egypt and Qatar have kept the ceasefire intact for now, but this fragile truce is fragile. Is it sustainable?
Thank you for having me, Mark. Is it fragile? Yes. And is it sustainable? Another yes, because whether the ceasefire can continue or not will depend on the will of all the parties and the mediators to maintain it. And so far, the majority of the parties in this equation do have a vested interest in this ceasefire remaining in place. Hamas and the rest of the Palestinians in general do have a vested interest in the continuation of this ceasefire in order to alleviate the current state of suffering and to avoid descending back into the state of wanton violence that existed before the ceasefire due to the Israeli aggression. Also, the Arab mediators in Egypt in particular, Egypt has a vested interest in maintaining this ceasefire in order to maintain regional stability and to alleviate the suffering of the Palestinians. And also, even the Americans have a vested interest in preserving this ceasefire, because President Trump's administration's motto has been "No war, no more wars. I'm going to come to office and I'm going to end all wars in 10 seconds." Apparently, that never happened, of course. However, he does have, apparently, at least that's what President Trump says and what the rest of his administration say, that they really do not want to be involved or entangled in a war in the Middle East. So the continuation of the ceasefire in accordance with the deal that has been reached of the ceasefire and the prisoner exchange, detainee exchange, is already an existing framework that the ceasefire can continue through in order to turn from a truce into a permanent cessation of hostilities. Of course, the Trump's proposals have thrown everything off balance. However, as we know, this proposal is far from implementable in any way. It's not viable, it's not realistic, and it will only cause more problems. And I think that the Israelis now are trying to get as many detainees out as they can throughout this arrangement. The idea is try, on the other side, the Palestinians and the Arabs need to take advantage of that in order to push strongly for the solidifying of the current ceasefire. And this will require the United States to be on board. And the only way this can be done is through providing a vision, a plan for the reconstruction, for the day after the war, the day after in Gaza, basically. And I think this is what Egypt is moving forward towards. And I think now that the Americans are much less stringent than they were. Marco Rubio said yesterday that the U.S. Secretary of State, he said that we are awaiting the proposals by the Arab states, and of course, in that he's referring basically to Egypt, because all the Arab states are united behind the Egyptian proposal or the Egyptian vision for the reconstruction of Gaza. Egypt is finalizing that. We already have the main features of this plan available to us, and I think that when it comes out, something can be discussed with the Americans, of course. But of course, I say that with extremely cautious optimism, Mark.
Well, let's talk about Trump for a second. What are we to make of this deadline that he announced 3 days ago, that Hamas has to release all the detainees by noon tomorrow, or all hell will break loose? Are we to just see that as a bluster and pretend he didn't say it?
Yeah, that's just Trump being Trump. It's always his negotiating tactic, trying to say something that is so dramatic and outlandish and very out there, so that he can cow his opponents into a corner and make them give concessions. And I think this is the Trump strategy. I don't think he was serious about letting hell break loose if all the detainees are not released on Saturday. And he knows that this is the deal that he was part of. Stephen Witkoff, his special envoy to the Middle East, even before assuming the presidency, Trump sent him to the Middle East, and in order to take, of course, in coordination with the Biden administration, then in order to take part in the negotiations. So the Trump administration agreed to this formula of detainee exchange. So they cannot say, oh, now we have to release everyone, because they signed on this agreement. They conceded to this agreement. They actually were part of making this agreement along with the Egyptian and the Qatari mediators. I think this was his way of trying to pressure Hamas. And on the other hand, Hamas had very legitimate demands regarding the entry of aid in accordance with the agreement, because Israel never allowed enough aid into the Gaza Strip, the agreed upon amounts. So now, apparently, the agreed upon amounts are coming back in return for the release, the exchange, the detainee exchange process with its extended timeline and its different stages going through in accordance with this plan. Trump might say to himself now, oh, it worked. I threatened Hamas and I gave them an ultimatum, and now they gave in and they gave something and they are abiding by the agreement. And however, of course, on the other hand, the Israelis also gave a concession by abiding to the agreement as well. So no one has won this very brief flare-up. But the problem is this kind of behavior on the part of President Trump can threaten such a fragile ceasefire, because the situation in Gaza and in the Middle East in general is very volatile. And such a tense situation and the complete absence of any trust between many of the belligerent parties, and even between the mediators and some of the belligerents like Israel and its Arab mediators, Israel has managed over the past 15 months to burn all the bridges of trust between it and its Arab neighbors, even countries that it has peace agreements and normal relations with, like Egypt and Jordan. However, now there is lack of trust. There is tension even in their own relationship due to the Israeli behavior, and also due to the U.S. emboldening Israeli behavior, especially after Trump came to office. So I think that President Trump needs to stop adopting such methods in dealing with the Middle East, because hell could actually break loose, and this would not be in anyone's interest, including the United States, led by President Donald Trump.
Well, let's come to Egypt's plan then, the Gaza restriction plan, led by Egypt. This is a critical step, of course. How do you assess its feasibility, given Israel's history of obstructing rebuilding efforts?
I think it's very feasible, technically. I mean, from a technical standpoint, it's very feasible, and it's very implementable, because basically reconstructing a war-torn area does not entail relocating the population. This is a very alien concept that Mr. Trump is proposing. I've never heard that when they were reconstructing Tokyo after World War II, or Berlin, or Hiroshima, or Hamburg, that they had to export the populations of these cities into other countries or into remote regions so that the reconstruction can be accomplished. And they were never told, we might not let you back. So this is not reconstruction, what Trump is proposing. This is ethnic cleansing, a war crime. However, what Egypt is proposing is a plan within the parameters of international law, within the parameters of international humanitarian law and international human rights norms, and also within the parameters of morality and the parameters of sanity, because proposing such an outlandish, insane plan like the displacement of the Palestinians will only push the region back into a state of war that will be multifaceted and might even expand. And Egypt was very clear about this. It said that if you try to displace the Palestinians by force, this is a threat to the national security of many countries around the region, including Egypt, and it will be detrimental to the peace and security and the stability of the region. And I think anyone can read through these statements and what they mean, if anyone has a sound brain. So what Egypt is proposing is the reconstruction of Gaza with the people of Gaza, the Palestinians, staying inside the Gaza Strip. They will be housed in temporary housing and tents in safe areas inside the Gaza Strip until the rubble is removed within 6 months, according to their preliminary leaks of this plan. And afterwards, the reconstruction effort will be undertaken by a multitude of nations, a multitude of countries who will pledge to fund the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. And of course, Egypt will play a central role, and other Arab countries as well. And I expect that the upcoming Arab Summit on the 27th of February, one of its main goals will be, and its potential outcomes will be, the complete Arab endorsement of the Egyptian plan. So I think that this is a feasible outcome, and I think that the Egyptian plan is a feasible plan. However, it cannot be implemented without the United States being on board, because the United States can be the only guarantor that the Israelis will not disrupt this plan, that the Israelis will not attack Gaza while everyone is trying to reconstruct it. This has to have international guarantees from the United Nations, led by the United States. So that's why it's essential that the US is on board with this plan in order for it to be implemented fully and safely.
Well, let me just go back to Trump's plan, ethnic cleansing, as you rightly call it. How do you evaluate the response to what he said, especially by the Europeans? Has it been strong enough, the condemnation from around the world?
I think it has. Everyone has been clear. You've heard President Macron today of France. Emmanuel Macron was very critical of Trump's plan. Olaf Scholz, so the Chancellor of Germany, was very critical of Trump's plan. Even the United Kingdom, a core ally of the United States, and also an adamant supporter of Israel, completely opposed the plan, describing it as basically illogical and not implementable as well. So I think that there is a consensus among the majority of the European community in general, whether within the EU or beyond, that this is not the right way to go, and this is something that contravenes international law and will be detrimental to the stability of the Middle East. And if the stability of the Middle East is further jeopardized, the stability and the security of Europe will be further jeopardized. And that's why they are very interested in maintaining the calm and restoring the calm in the region, the Europeans, because if there is any exodus, any refugee crisis coming out of the region due to the outbreak of hostilities, once again, many of those refugees will head to Europe, as we have seen, for example, with the Syrian conflict, which flooded Europe with a few million refugees. And also, not only the Europeans, the global South, of course, has been adamant in its opposition, and the majority of the global South to this plan. Many African countries, of course, most of the Arab countries, or even all the Arab countries, most of the nations of the Islamic world. We're speaking about 57 nations in this regards, and also in addition to the majority of African countries and other great powers beyond the West, and rising middle powers like Brazil, China, Russia. No, everyone is against it. The only country that is actually serious about this, the only two countries that are actually serious about the Trump plan, are the Israelis, of course, because they are pro anything that is genocidal and unethical and that fulfills their genocidal plans and designs inside the Palestinian territories, which they have had for since eternity. And the United States. Nobody else agrees with the Trump plan, the plan at the end of the day. However, no one is willing to actually take any step to stop it or obstruct it other than Egypt and the Arab countries. The others, the Europeans, the Chinese, the Russians, anybody else, yes, they will condemn it. Yes, they would say, oh, this is wrong and this should never happen. It's so unethical. Bad USA, bad Israel, but that's about it. They will never do anything else, and they will not jeopardize their own very complicated, complex relationship with the United States, especially with a president as temperamental and unpredictable and sometimes quite foolhardy, if you excuse my choice of words there, like President Trump. So I think this is the cause of the Arabs. This is the issue of the Arabs, and I think that the Arabs are taking concrete action in order to take a collective stance in order to try to obstruct and impede this plan. And it's not through violence or confrontation. It's through coming up with another plan, voicing your opposition, voicing your rejection, saying that you will not collaborate with any attempts to enforce this sinister plan, but at the same time, you're coming up with the alternative. It's called diplomacy, it's called politics. And by the way, this is a language that President Trump understands.
When it comes to President Trump, of course, the whole world was expecting it to be difficult, unpredictable, but we're just over 20 days in. Did you, Dr. Osman, expect it to be quite like this, especially when it comes to Gaza?
I expected something crazy to happen, but I did not expect it to happen so fast. I never imagined that this will happen. The entirety of President Trump's foreign policy, including his Middle East policy, that this will transpire in only 3 weeks, less before the end of the first month of his presidency. And when I think that we would have to live through 4 more years of this, like just mind-boggling. My mind just freezes. I cannot comprehend how the world will survive 4 other years with this philosophy or this method or this type of leadership, supposed leadership that President Trump is trying to make or exercise on the global stage. However, I think that now with what he did in the Middle East, since it came at a very early stage, I think it could be quite beneficial because it revealed the actual colors and the actual intentions of everyone. And I think that this will make us way more prepared from here onwards to deal with the Trump administration's policy on Palestine and the Middle East, because now we know that we have a president or an administration that is not remotely interested in a peaceful settlement of the Palestinian cause based on the two-state solution on the June 1967 borders. And of course, this is not a surprise. This was the same stance taken by President Trump in his first term. However, now with the current state of fluidity in the region due to the unfortunate events in Gaza over the past 15 months, and it spilled over to other countries like Lebanon and Syria and Yemen and Iran, which basically turned it into a minimized regional confrontation between Iran, its proxies, and Israel, which nearly turned into a regional war, devastating regional war that could have killed hundreds of thousands of people. So Trump coming at such a very pivotal time, at a very also critical time, I think this maximizes the challenges at this point. So I cannot give you I think I've answered your question saying that no, I did not expect that he would be that fast. However, the idea of the displacement, that Trump would be prone or open to the idea of displacement of the Palestinians, yeah, I definitely thought that he might push for that solution. But not at that very early stage, and not so forcefully.
Okay. And of course, the upcoming Arab summit in Cairo is going to be very important. What role do you expect Egypt and its allies to play in shaping the future of Gaza, really, and of course, preventing any further displacement?
I think Egypt has a vested interest, along with many Arab countries, have a vested interest in preserving the Palestinian cause, preserving the existence of the Palestinian people, their continued existence in their ancestral historical lands, and that they should never be removed or ethnically cleansed again, because they were in 1948 ethnically cleansed out of the majority of historical Palestine. Now only 22% of historical Palestine is left for the Palestinians. We have a state of Israel now. It is recognized by the world and by many countries in the Arab world, and there is no problem with that at the moment, because what happened has happened. But in order to undo this historical injustice, a Palestinian state needs to be established in accordance with international law and UN resolutions and the consensus of the international community, and even the Israelis committed to that in the 1990s during the Oslo Accords, and before that in the Camp David Accords with Egypt in 1978. So the idea is that there has to be a Palestinian state in the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem. However, and the Arabs are have a vested interest in accomplishing that. This can never be accomplished when the displacement of Palestinians is being proposed. So now the plan to reconstruct Gaza might be, in Arab eyes at least, it might be hopeful that this might be the beginning of a phase that might lead to the reopening or the reigniting of peace talks in order to settle the Palestinian cause, but I do not believe it's going to happen.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Mohamed Osman. Thank you very much for being here with us on Q News. Always a pleasure.